The Duellists is a 1977 released historical drama directed by Ridley Scott.
The setting is 1800 and a minor incident turns into a 15-year-long feud between two officers in Napoleon's army. It's a time when honour and respect demanded that they continue to confront each other over the years until one can finally be declared the victor.
Yeah, so this is Ridley Scott's first film, debut film, and again, obviously we're not doing themed films at the moment. So, but we were thinking of kind of one idea was to do directorial debuts. So this is one that would easily have slipped into that.
Yeah, and obviously Ridley's he's just had a film.
The Last Duel, isn't he?
Huh?
Is that The Last Duel?
Yeah, it is called The Last Duel, yeah, and then you got House of Gucci, which, depending on whether this is uploaded, is either already out or about to come out.
That's right. So The Last Duel is very similar to this, actually, because that is also about duelling. This one, I had never seen this. I mean, I haven't seen all of Ridley Scott's films. I've seen a lot of Ridley Scott's films. I've seen a lot of his early ones. Never saw this one before. No. And, again, knew of it, but, had just not got around to watching it. And I'm so glad I did, because I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
It was so good. Just really, I don't know even where to begin, because I really enjoyed it. I watched it just last night actually, and I just had it was like a rollicking adventure, wasn't it? A good old romp, basically. I mean, I suppose what I'll start with is the two leads. So you've got Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel. I mean, this is France, the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte. And you've got two American leads, which I'm personally, I'm not for a second having a go at American actors here, because I'm a huge fan of a lot of American cinema, but I do have a bit of a thing sometimes when you put English speaking actors into a foreign language setting. I mean, obviously here you've got two American leads and the rest of them are British, so all of them, the whole cast. I mean, maybe one or two French actors in there, but for the most part they are English speaking, either American or British. But here, it didn't bother me. I mean, obviously they're there because they're the big American stars that are brought in to kind of be in this big film. But they were so good. And Keith Carradine particularly. I mean, he's obviously from acting is in his blood. And Harvey Keitel at this point had made Taxi Driver was before this. Yeah, and Mean Streets and other films. But they both carried it so well, and Keith Carradine is the star of the film, so he plays Albert Dubert. Excuse my pronunciation there, but he's going up against he's alongside people like Robert Stephens and Albert Finney, two kind of great British actors. Robert Stephens is always someone that he almost likes to try and act everyone off the screen. And yet Keith Carradine, he holds his own here. Absolutely, and you kind of put aside. I think Harvey Keitel at the beginning he's almost trying a British accent, I think, but then it kind of slips and he goes back to American at one point.
I think that's probably for the best, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But it didn't bother me too much, because I was in their characters were so good, and what really stands out here, apart from it being a great story, is it looks exquisite. It is exquisitely photographed, this film. It just looked stunning. I mean, there were a number of scenes in here. I mean, the whole film looks like a painting, and I wonder whether it was inspired by maybe paintings of the time. It also looked and felt a lot like Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick's film. It's just lit perfectly. The whole film looks beautiful.
I mean, Ridley Scott is a very visual
filmmaker. Yeah, I think he was an artist, wasn't he, originally? Yeah. Because I remember him drawing all the sets for Alien and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, he does storyboard everything. I mean, the storyboards aren't particularly amazing to look at, but they translate directly. So he knows exactly how he wants every shot to look. Yeah. And I think the cinematography, obviously, he had quite a long career in advertising, making TV adverts, and he worked with various others, but he worked with that cinematographer on those as well. So they kind of came, so they knew exactly how each other worked and what they wanted. So I mean, going back to the two leads, Ridley Scott originally wanted Oliver Reed and Michael York.
Oh, okay.
Which, quite obvious choices, maybe.
At that time.
But, I mean, I would assume Oliver Reed for the Harvey Keitel role and Michael York for the Keith Carradine. That was, the other way around, I don't know, it would be a bit
It's the trouble. The trouble with that, though, it would have felt too much like the Three Musketeers, which of course both those actors were in, and that's a similar kind of romp, but that is a more, because that's Richard Lester. That's a more kind of comical romp.
Yeah.
You know, which this isn't. This is more serious.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it would have made. It might have felt a bit more theatrical.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think possibly would have aged it slightly, watching it now.
Yeah.
Whereas watching it now, it feels quite contemporary because you've got these two American actors in it. So, the like you said, the accents don't bother me. They haven't got particularly strong, broad American accents. So it doesn't, it's not completely out of place. And like you said, they're all supposed to be French. And no one's speaking French, so it doesn't really matter. It's you can suspend that disbelief. Nobody's speaking French, and nobody is French, so it doesn't matter what accent they have. It doesn't feel out of place, particularly. So
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, because obviously it is clearly in France. It's filmed in France. Lots of it. They are wearing highly authentic looking costumes and military uniforms from the time. So I don't know. I do find it a little bit, and I always have done. It didn't bother me in this one at all. I was just saying, because sometimes it does bother me, but didn't here at all. And all the acting is kind of on top form. I mean, it's a great cast. Alan Armstrong, Tom Conti's in there, and the aforementioned Albert Finney and Robert Stevens, Edward Fox. I mean, it's a great. I mean, literally, you've got these two American leads, and then all the rest of the cast. The majority of them are all these kind of great British TV and film actors that hold it together perfectly. I think the other thing about it, I mean, Ridley Scott clearly was, he was a modern filmmaker. He was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And this film, at times, I felt quite ahead of its times. There's some interesting editing choices. There's a sequence near the end of the film which feels very kind of ahead of its time, I thought. And then the fight scenes. I mean, obviously, this is a film about dueling. And fencing, and the fight scenes, they feel very modern. You feel like you're in there with them. It's very up close. It's quite fast paced, which you go back to the 70s. Fight scenes in films still, some of them lingered that kind of the old Bond, which didn't feel that rough and ready, whereas here it actually does, and like I said, it feels like you're in with them. It's like you're in there fighting alongside them, which I really enjoyed about this film. It felt like it, like you said, contemporary. It didn't feel that old. I mean, you watch a film like Three Musketeers, it does feel a bit old hat because of the way it's been shot and the way it's been filmed.
I mean, I think the fights were held by, they were very authentic.
Absolutely.
When you watch sort of old swashbuckling films with loads of sword fights, a lot of times they're just bashing the swords on each other's sword, and that's not how people sword fight in real life, because it just doesn't do anything. You're aiming to stab the other person, aren't you? So if you're just waving your blade around wildly, you're not going to hit anything, and you're probably going to get hit. They do need to take their time and pick a spot to try and get, and that's what happens. They don't just go for it. A, it wears you out, and B, you're not going to get anywhere.
And also there's that which is a bit like there's a scene, there's one of the fights later on where they get very tired, and they're almost like boxers because they start kind of holding each other and hugging because they're so worn out. And that felt very realistic as well, which is something you tend not to get in swashbuckling. Swashbuckling in the old films, they never used to get that close.
No. There's no leaping off tables and sword fighting upstairs.
Which is what they did in Three Musketeers. Yeah, or going downstairs and all that kind of
There's no somersaults or anything like that. I mean, some films like Princess Bride, for example, that doesn't take itself seriously, and that has that has great sword fights in it, but they're not, realistic by any stretch of the imagination.
No, they're not supposed to be. Yes.
No, but they're fun to watch. But in this, they feel like they are really, they are authentic, and it also helps that every single one is different. So there's one, like you said, where we come to it halfway through and they're exhausted. There's another one that literally lasts about 10 seconds. They could have fallen into the trap of just doing the same thing, maybe filming it slightly differently or having it in different locations and just having the same duel over and over again. But every duel is completely different to the last
Absolutely.
one.
And I think that's also partly down to how the film has been written, because another thing I really enjoyed about it was it feels like a revenge film. It's not, obviously. It's a kind of it's almost like a revenge film with a twist. You know, it's a film that it takes place over a number of years, and it's this one thing that keeps coming up in the lives of these two men. And even, I mean, there's a point that I think it was about 4 or 5 years past, and they mention how the uniform has changed and his hairstyle has changed, but even the weapons they use change. So they're starting with swords. But then guns come in, you know. Obviously, you think of a duel. The first thing you think of when you think of the old duel is two men back to back, walking out, 10 steps, turning around and shooting each other, which they don't actually do in this. But guns do come into play as well in this film as the years roll by. So it's very authentic. It looks beautiful. It's amazingly acted. I mean, I think they're all trying to act each other off the screen in this film, which is kind of sometimes great when actors do that, because they're playing off of each other and they're having having a good old time doing it. I thought this was really, really great. I haven't actually. I've been watching a few films lately, but I haven't actually really enjoyed a film for quite a while. So yeah, very happy with this.
Yeah, no, it's stunning. What a debut.
What a debut.
What a way to start.
What a way to start. So, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, the music in it is great as well. That's by Howard Blake. I mean, his most famous work was on The Snowman. The Snowman. Walking in the Air and
absolutely,
all that.
Love that.
But yeah, the music was great. Obviously, it's based on a story.
It's Joseph Conrad.
Yeah, Joseph Conrad, called The Duel. I mean, he wrote Hearts of Darkness, which is what Apocalypse Now was based on. Considering how amazing it looks, the budget was only $900,000.
Wow, really?
Which seems crazy. I mean, obviously we're talking over 40 years ago now.
Yeah, of course.
But even if you adjust that for inflation, it's only like $5.5 million, which is, by today's standards, is absolutely nothing for a movie.
Well, I suppose. I mean,
not one that looks like that, anyway.
I mean, I imagine a lot of the money went into the costumes.
Yeah.
And just it's shot. The locations are beautiful. I mean, like I said, it's very picturesque, this movie, and I think probably, the authenticity helps with that, definitely. All the urban scenes, they feel lived in, these urban places, but then it's lots of stuff out in the countryside, and it all looks really lush and green, and it's just
I mean, they didn't build any sets. I mean, obviously that's going to save money.
That's going to save a lot of money.
But yeah, everything was filmed on location in France. There's a great shot at the start. There's a house that's like on stilts. That was a real house.
There's all the locations in this. There's a ruin that comes up in it at one point, which looks incredible. Yeah, I mean, stunning location work. I've always thought, what a great job to be a location location manager and having to go off and go around the world and find all these wonderful locations.
And the final shot as well with well, I won't say who's in it.
No.
What an amazing shot. Any criticism I would have of it is I would have liked to have known a bit more about Harvey Keitel's character, because he's a bit of an enigma. We spend our time with Keith Carradine, and we only really see Harvey Keitel when they meet up to duel. For the most part, we don't see much of him outside of the duels. He likes dueling, obviously. I mean, that's what gets him into trouble at the start and why they have this conflict. But
and even the obsession, you don't really. I mean, he's obsessed with just. He wants to take him out, and he's just this obsessive, and you're like, why?
Yeah, you don't really get an insight into where that comes from.
He's kind of made out to be a kind of the villain of the piece, but he is a soldier like Keith Carradine as well, and they are just out there, doing what they have to do, and you're like, he can't be. He's an odd character. He is just like a mysterious person that can't. He just crops up every time they get into a fight, and he's like, oh, there he is again. Get the swords out, but yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, I agree.
Just a little bit more
backstory
on him of something. Not, I don't mean his life story, but
no,
just a little bit more, into his motivation. Why he is the way he is.
Well, I wonder if the book would
possibly, yeah.
More there. So we have this on DVD.
Yeah, I picked up the DVD. Yeah, I mean, Shout Factory released it on Blu-ray, which is out of print now. I mean, I went on eBay and I think I got this off Music Magpie, so it was like a couple of quid. Someone was selling a Blu-ray, and I think it was about 15 quid. So I thought, I'll get the DVD because I've never seen it, and also it's got Ridley Scott's first sort of short film on it, which the Blu-ray didn't. So I thought, I'd be interested to see that. It's called Boy and Bicycle.
Oh, I've seen that before.
Which
Tony Scott.
Yeah, stars Tony Scott. Yeah, I mean, I think it's about half an hour, but
not much happens.
Not really. It's just him going around town, going to the beach and with his bike, and just with narration over the top of it, pondering life and
black and white, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So visually, even then, visually interesting, but not particularly exciting by any means. So interesting to see, certainly.
Yeah, if we gave film scores on this channel, I think I'd give this 10 out of 10 because thank you for suggesting it. I mean, a really great film with a really interesting cast. I mean, Liz Smith's in there. Pete Postlethwaite doesn't say anything.
Doesn't say anything.
He plays he's Robert Stevens. He's giving him a shave, and he's cast. He's credited though, but he hasn't got any lines. No. Christina Rains is in there. She plays the woman that becomes Carradine's character's wife later in the film. Diana Quick is another actress, is in there too. Yeah, it's a really watchable, enjoyable film, and if you haven't seen it, I absolutely recommend. If you like, kind of big, we're talking about blockbuster films over the summer, and this kind of feels like it should be a blockbuster film. Yeah, if you like historically accurate pieces, films that look beautiful, films that look great, and just want a bit of fun. It's not too heavy, and you're following these two men through parts of their life and in an interesting and exciting way. I mean,
it's only PG, but there's a bit of blood, but not much else. I put it on during the day when my kids were around. They weren't particularly fussed, but they flitted in and out. But when the fights were happening and stuff like that, they were sort of quite interested.
Right.
They didn't sit and watch the whole thing, but they didn't. Oh, what are you watching? This looks rubbish. Well, they were, they weren't completely repelled by it. So I don't know if that's a recommendation or not, but I try and put Star Wars on, and they're like, oh no. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I think it's a really great film, and there's also the Duellists song by Iron Maiden was based on this film.
There you go.
Which is off of Power Slave. I dropped that in there because my friend who passed away a couple of weeks ago, he kind of got me into Iron Maiden, and he was the person that got me into kind of heavy metal. And it was Iron Maiden for him, and he was a big Iron Maiden fan. So yeah, I thought I'd drop that in there because it's a great song from Power Slave, great album.
I'm not familiar with that song, so I'll have to give it a listen.
There you go. So that was The Duellists, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there, and don't forget to push the bell for notifications. There's other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on social media, and join us again soon for another video.